And good morning, good morning, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is that you are joining us. This is Barbara of Barbara and Friends on a Mission. And you know what? One of my things is that I'm on a mission to make happiness the norm rather than the exception. The thing is, part of happiness is having impact and having influence and being able to earn income. And all of that goes into happiness, that to live happy, healthy, financially free, abundant lives. And one of the things for me is I am so grateful that I have friends who also feel the same way. And one of the biggest things, though, is in our relationships, because relationship impacts everything, whether it's our home life, our business life, our personal, the relationship that we have with ourselves. And so I am so excited to introduce my friend Pascale to you. Good morning, good morning, good morning, Pascale. How are you doing?
I'm really good, thanks. Thanks for having me. And speaking about happiness, I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah. And the thing is that Pascale and I, we are from the same hometown, Montreal, Canada. And,
Yep.
and I'm trying to think now, even how we even talked about that, but we were in a group together, and all of a sudden it was like, oh yeah, Pascale is French, and I'm from Montreal, and I said, well, I'm from Montreal.
It came as a surprise.
And it was a surprise, so who knew? But anyways, so let's talk about your mission, because I just love it, and I just really feel it is so important. So tell us about what you see as your mission and how you want to go forward with it.
Well, first of all, I grew up in a family where parents had a very hard time communicating, and it's still the case. So from a very early age, I figured that if I wanted to make it into the world, I needed to be efficient at communicating. And my mission in life basically is to make sure that people understand each other, which means having good communication skills, empathy, being able to tell the nonverbal from other people, and basically just connect. So that's my main mission. And the way that it shows in my life right now is that I started Parent Lead Coaching. It's a company that focuses on helping parents communicate better with their teenagers, because I feel like when you grow up, so many things happen to you, and sometimes parents forget what it was to be a teenager. And there is a lot of miscommunication at this stage of life for kids. So I want to help parents communicate with their teenagers, because they're at crossroads in their lives, and they need the help of their parents. They still need their parents, but sometimes parents don't know how to help them. So that's where I come in.
Right. And it's that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you, because as a teenager a few years ago, but as a teenager, I always felt that my parents didn't understand me. Yeah. And now I realize why. Because when I went into personality science and started to learn about the different personalities and how they all show up and how it impacts everything that you do, your personality. And once I understood that, the four basic ones, well, I'm what we call a nurturer, very into community and want to be part of a group. And my parents, I look back now and realize that they were very structured, and it's like, okay, and I don't quite fit in with that. And so I can always remember as a teenager feeling that that mom just doesn't get me at all.
Yeah.
But I had no idea how to articulate that.
Yes. The fact is that when you're a teenager, you don't have as much experience as your parents do, right? But it comes with, there's a balance there, because when you're a teenager, you're much more adaptable than your parents.
Right.
But you don't have the experience. Parents have the experience, but they're more set in their ways. So.
Oh, what a great analogy, Pascale. That is absolutely the truth.
Yeah. So parents are less adaptable. They don't know how to, figure out how to help their teenagers, because they're set in their ways. They've got behaviors that they've been repeating and patterns that they've been repeating for years. And the fact is, their kid is growing and changing so fast that it's hard for them to adapt their communication, to make sure that the connection with their kid is still there. And it's the opposite for the teenager, because they're figuring out who they are. And it shows up two ways. Either they are the same as their parents and there's confrontation because the parent doesn't see what their teenager reflects back at them, or they're the complete opposite and there's no understanding whatsoever of their teenagers and they feel lost. So that's where I come in. I build bridges between parents and their teenagers, because there are bridges that can be built.
Right.
It's not that hard. It just requires a little more work by the parents to become more flexible and see their kids for who they are.
Right. You know, and I think also for like I look back now, and I was a little bit of a rebellious teenager. I think because of that, it was like, because one of the things that I have now realized about myself is that I like to have a little bit, pay attention to me. And that's part of my personality code. I don't want to feel like I'm left out, and I want to be part of the group. So when when the family would be doing something and it was like they didn't invite me, okay, well, Barbara, for heaven's sakes, I look back now and go, what's wrong with you? But you know what? And that is the key too, is we always take it on ourselves that what's wrong with us.
Yeah, that's
That
true.
we're not getting along, that we're not, and that why did I feel that way? And now I can look back and see actually specific instances where, oh, Barbara, yeah, you probably brought that on yourself.
Yeah.
I can look back now, but when you're 17 and 18, and you're just, starting to get a little bit of independence, when I first got my driver's license, and oh, yike. And I just rebelled, of course. But then it was like, I just rebelled because my parents were very structured and you followed the rules.
Yeah. And by that age, frankly, 17, 18 years old, rules should be a thing of the past, because your teenager has grown up. They're now an adult. And if you haven't trained them along the way to be responsible of their decisions with consequences, but still giving them the freedom to explore, because those are the days where you should explore. If you haven't given them the space and the safety and the absence of judgment too, parents can be very judgmental, and teenagers, they rebel against judgment because they judge themselves pretty harshly, and they have the judgment of their peers. So when parents judge, it's just adding a layer that's not necessary.
Right. Speaking of that, that is such a good observation. So speaking of, how do you help teenagers to deal with peer pressure?
It's a long process, because basically peer pressure, what it is, it's attacking the ego and the self-image of the teenager, and this image is ever flowing. It's ever changing. So what peer pressure does basically is that even if the teenager is secure with their value set and their values that have been taught to them by the parents growing up, even if they're secure, when peer pressure comes, if a teenager is like you, for instance, and wants to belong, which is huge when you're a teenager, you might, even though you feel you shouldn't do it, you might do it. But I mean, peer pressure is one thing, but building the self-confidence of the teenager, really, it starts at home, and it starts earlier than the teenage years. You can still build it during the teenage years, but it should be built like prior to adolescence, because it can be tricky afterwards. Your influence on your teenager diminishes as they grow up. So the maximum input would be before 10 years old if you can. But if something happens during the teenage years of your teenager, like you feel like your teenager is anxious and has friends that are pressuring them into changing their looks or changing their habits, or even, making bad decisions. It's kind of hard by putting a rule to have the influence. Rules, they don't tend to be very efficient when your kid reaches a certain age. What you can do is have a discussion with your teenager about what peer pressure is, that they are loved, whatever the decision they make, but that certain decisions have certain consequences. Did they think it through? So just build into them the reflex to think things through. And basically, life is about choices. Every choice brings a consequence. So if you build that reflex, that you build them into them, that they have to figure out what might be the positive consequences and the negative consequences, and weighing whether they can live with the negative consequences, whatever they are, and the maximum negative consequences. If they can live with that, okay, then follow along. But if there's something into them that kind of doesn't quite feel right, when pressure comes from the outside, teach them to listen to themselves, because their gut feeling is probably the best weapon against the world that they will have growing up. Gut feeling is almost never wrong. And if they can listen to that, I think they'll be okay.
And I'm so glad that you've said that, because that's, I think, something that we, even as adults, don't always do.
Yeah. And we regret it most days.
And then we regret it. And I'm going to tell on myself this, and then plus it, and I'm going to tell on myself, but also if this is a warning also for anybody else that happens to be listening to this. There are scammers out there that are just absolutely trying to take advantage of adults, teenagers, and they are out there.
Yep.
Well, back in December, I had what I thought was a legitimate call from this person who had cloned my computer company. And said, gee, you know what, we see that we have overcharged you for a service and would like to give it to you back. Okay, that sounds reasonable. So I said, but you know what? As I was starting to do it, it was like that little check of the heart that, oh, gee, Barb, this is really, shouldn't you be doing this? And it was like, yeah, should I be doing this? But didn't listen.
Of course.
And then of course, realized afterwards, thank the Lord, that it was a gift card scam.
Okay.
So luckily, I still had the gift cards, but found out, because I was finally listened and said, you know what, I'm going to call my bank.
Yeah.
I called the bank and she said, yeah, no, Barb, there's nothing here. So yeah, this is a scam. And I was like, thank you so much. If I had listened to myself, if I had listened to my my inner voice to begin with, I wouldn't have been, but I still had the gift card. So I just bought a new computer with the money. But it was such a wake-up call for me, that how important our intuition is. So if we can put that into kids, like I can look back on times when I was a teenager going, ooh, I need to do that. Or, ooh, I shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to make it a safe place to say, hey, you know, Mom, this is what my friends are wanting to do. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
being a parent is I think being a parent, I'm not a parent, but being a parent probably is the hardest thing there is, and the most confronting thing there is too, because it's completely out of your control most of the time. And it builds your personality, but it also teaches you fears that you may not have experienced otherwise. You fear for your child. Guilt as well is a big thing when you're a parent, because you feel like Am I doing enough for my child? Am I building them up or putting them down?
Right.
Children are so resilient. So stop with the guilt. Children will find their way.
Yeah.
Your job basically is to teach them about their inner compass. That's what I call, the gut feeling. It's the inner compass. Teach them to be good people and to be giving, and teach them to, life is about love. So teach
Right.
them about love. After that, everything else is pretty much going to figure itself out.
Right.
They will figure it out.
Yeah. And just to go back a little bit, is that I love the fact that you are taking on this role as a coach of parents. One of the things that struck me when you said, gee, well, I'm not a parent. And then I thought, you're probably hearing that, well, if you're not a parent, how can you? And then I thought about it for a second and went, that's what we sometimes parents need, is somebody who's not a parent to say, hey, really, seriously, get a grip.
Yeah, I've
I
got
can look back on times when, oh, brother, if I had somebody sane who wasn't a parent, because I think we get so caught up in the drama of being a parent.
Yeah.
It's kind of like we can't see the forest for the trees.
Incredible analogy. That's exactly that. I provide the external
Right.
point of view, vantage point, and by seeing the whole picture, and
Right.
of course, with my personal history, I've worked with teenagers for years, so I know this audience very, very well. And I've also helped teenagers while I was a teenager. So I grew up really fast, and I had to figure things out by myself. I did journaling starting at the age of 10. So I really have still the archives of what it was to grow up. It's still very fresh in my mind. So for parents who are caught up in the business, in the everyday life, the routine and responsibilities, taking care of the house and everything, they don't have like this vantage point and this distance that they might require or need. And I'm there to make them remember what it was growing up, because it's past. It's so long ago that they may not have the empathy that they require in order to adapt to what's going on in their teenager's life. And being a teenager is hard too. Those are the fastest paced changes you go through in your life, not only biologically, but socially, emotionally, psychologically. You grow up within this very quick range of a few years, and you've got pressure coming from the exterior of figure out what you want to do with your future. Be creative. Don't be too rebel. Stay in the lane, but focus. But experience. But contradictory messages coming all the time builds anxiety too in teenagers, and their body is not even fully formed yet. Their prefrontal cortex is not fully formed yet. So be kind with your teenager, because if they want to sleep later in the morning, maybe they need it.
Yeah. And one of the things that I deal with sometimes with my clients as an adult is that they have spent their entire life in leading somebody else's life that started as a teenager when they were being groomed for the family business. And then all of a sudden they reach their mid-40s and they're like, I can't do this another minute. I can't do this. I'm not happy. I'm not fulfilled. I'm not whatever adjective that they want to use. So that's one of the things that I always is like, gee, well, where did it start? Well, as a teenager, I worked in the family business.
Yeah.
And it was just expected, which might be really good.
Might be good for some people, but you have to be conscious as a parent that you don't impose your frame or your goals or your hopes on your child too much. It's okay to have hopes and dreams and to, support your kids and provide them with a path. But if they go astray, just tell yourself, well, they're expressing who they are becoming.
Right. Right.
And you might be able to support them into becoming the best versions of themselves that they can be,
Right.
and not just be a replica of yourself. There's an ego component there that we have to work on.
Right. Right. So how about it? Let's start with it. Well, not start with this, but how would a parent go about taking that first step and then realizing, okay, yeah, I need some outside help?
There are a few levels, of course, of help that might be provided. I must say, I'm not a therapist. I'm a coach, and I'm a communications coach. So basically, this is my specialty. But if you feel like, again, we go back to the gut feeling. If you feel as a parent that your teenager is maybe hiding something from you, or that you see that their behaviors are changing and you have no clue what's going on, or you don't know what to do about it, or you feel like, you're having confrontations that are becoming more frequent and you feel like you're losing touch with what's going on in your teenager's life, if you can catch that early, it's even better, because we can address this and move forward, and it's even better. So that's the first level, I would say. And most parents face that. Some of them, figure out a way to reconnect with their teenager and they don't need my help. But some of them, they feel lost. They don't know what's going on. And even them, they start feeling, feelings of guilt. They start feeling fear for their kids. They might find out things that they don't like about what's going on in their child, because they start, spying or looking in their personal lives, and then confrontation comes, because as a teenager you want your privacy, but as a parent,
Right. And that's a fine line between observing the child's privacy and being aware of what they're doing.
Yes.
As a concerned adult, as a concerned parent.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So that might be the first stage. Then if you can't manage it and you don't find a solution, it might escalate. Like, your child will actively hide things. They might even go out and don't tell you what they're doing at all, having no clue, how to interact with you. And then they just close the door of their room and you never see them. And they rebel against you. The screaming match starts. And of course, that can escalate too. And if you don't, as a parent, know what's going on in your teenager's life, it can become quite difficult, because the bridge collapses basically, and you have to rebuild the bridge. But if trust isn't there, so if you don't trust your teenager and they don't trust you, this is where a more definitive intervention needs to happen. And it starts with the parent. It's the parent's job to rebuild the bridge. It's not the teenager's job to do that. It's your job as a parent to make sure that communication goes on. So, and sometimes you don't know how to do that. And that's where I come from. I can help you rebuild this bridge, but you might be conscious. Yeah, you need to be able to be humble enough to know that you need help and to make the changes, because changing, in your 40s or maybe 50s is harder than changing when you're a teenager. But let me tell you, it's worth it, because the change that you will see in your teenager moving forward, once the relationship is mended, it's priceless. It's priceless. And you'll feel proud that you've been able to accomplish that.
Wow. And that's what we all need to hope. That's what we all hope for, is to have a happy, healthy, financially free, abundant lives. Because when you have a teenager who feels validated and is in that knowing that they're trusted and they're trusting, that puts them out into adulthood where they can get a job or a career or a vocation or ministry or whatever it is that they're looking for going forward. And they know that they have that self-confidence to do it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Pascale, this was amazing. So share with people how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, the easiest way to get in touch with me is through my Facebook page. It's Parent Lead Coaching on Facebook, quite easy to find. My website is in construction, but should be up by the end of July. It's parentleadcoaching.com. I will have a little information there about my services. And there's a gift giveaway that I'm hosting August 16 to the 22nd. It's called the Parents Stress-Free Back to School giveaway. And I will announce it on my Facebook page.
Cool beans. And I think I'm going to be part of that giveaway. So it's like, yeah.
2 in 1.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So, and you know what, parents, give yourself some grace. Absolutely. Also, though, give your child some grace.
Yes.
And there is that, meeting of the minds. And that is so, so, so important because it will absolutely take you through the rest of your life. And you will have absolutely an amazing relationship with your children because, and now as a grandparent, I am blessed that my grandchildren, we all live together. And it is such a blessing to see them develop into their teenage years and to go through the stages that we're talking about and to see the fun things and to be part of it. And so that's always amazing. So anyways, everybody have an awesome day. Thank you so much for joining us. Pascale, thank you so much for coming on Barbara and Friends on a Mission show. And this is going to be going out and we're going to be adding Pascale's credentials and her info below this that you're going to be able to get in touch with her. And I am so excited to have you here. So thanks again for coming.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I had a blast. It was a great conversation.
Yeah. And you know what? That's one of my favorite things is, it's just a conversation. And when you can relax and do that with your child too, start a conversation. So I admonish you, I just encourage you today, start a conversation with your teenager. So have an awesome day. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.